Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Thank you so much for joining me for another amazing session of the Daily African Proverbs. My name is Simon Javan Okello. I'm in Seattle, Washington, and I'm originally from Kisumu, Kenya, right by Lake Victoria. And I'm really, really privileged to be here with you. We have a proverb today from Ethiopia, and we all know what's going on in Ethiopia currently. So I'm just sending love and, strength to everybody in Ethiopia, and also Ethiopians who are not in Ethiopia, but they're facing the current, instability over there. But I want to, share with you the proverb that we are discussing today that says that one who rides, he who runs alone cannot be outrun. He who runs alone cannot be outrun. And I have a special guest, who is, just someone who is special to me and is also special to, our thriving Daily African Proverbs community here on Clubhouse. Her name is Gogo Rutendo Ngara, and she's joining us from South Africa. I would love for you, Gogo, to just say hi, and after that, I'm going to share what my thoughts about this proverb is, and ask you to also share with us what your thoughts are, and then we will continue our conversation from there. Thank you, but especially thank you to the Black Fox and African Spirituality Club for having us. Thank you so much, my sister Kat, for inviting me and making me and Gogo Rutendo feel at home. And thank you, Mala, for also creating the space and making this possible. Gogo Rutendo, say hello briefly.
No, blessed greetings to the entire community, to all the brothers and sisters from across the world. I believe the mothers, the grandmothers, the grandfathers, who are all here with us, but also special greetings to our ancestors, because it is because of them that we're here in this conversation and in community.
Oh, thank you so much. And I want to also just give a moment to our elder Jay Naidu, who has also joined us on Clubhouse. Jay, please just say hi quickly before we get into today's proverb. And Jay Naidu is also how I connected to Gogo Rutendo Ngara. And Jay is an elder that I have a lot of love and respect for. Jay, please just say hello briefly.
Hi, Simon. It's been some time since I've been in the room and missed you wonderful people. But hi, Gogoru.
Greetings.
And I've just arrived with my grandson. So I'm just settling in, but I'm going to be listening very carefully. So thank you so much. And thank you for the wonderful work you and the team continue to do to talk about the story of Africa from Africans. Blessings.
Thank you so much, Elder Jane. I do, this is exciting. And really one of the things that excites me the most about today is that we are not doing it alone. We are doing it together with you, Kat and Mala. And so as you look at the top of the room on Clubhouse, you see that the proverb for today is, he who runs alone cannot be outrun. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please leave your comment so that we learn from you as well. And if you're on Clubhouse, feel free to raise your hand. We want you all to join us on stage, but at 6:30 a.m. we are going to turn off hand raising. When I look at this proverb, he who runs alone cannot be outrun. This proverb seems to tell me that, you cannot run alone, because then there will be no meaning in running. This proverb seems to tell me that if you run alone, yes, there will be no competition, nobody can outrun you, but then what's the meaning of running then? That's what came up for me. But I want to hear from the wonderful, Gogo Rutendo Ngara, if you're meeting Gogo Rutendo for the first time, she's someone that really moved us last week. And today we are not only going to hear her interpretation of this proverb, but you're going to learn briefly about her story, and you're going to learn about her perspectives when it comes to how we as African people, whether we are in the diaspora or whether we are back home, how we can embrace and practice African spirituality more. And then from there, she might share with us some of the work that she's currently doing and how you can all support. And then we'll hear, your own interpretations, especially for those who are on stage. And then after that, Gogo Rutendo is going to close us out with grounding. She's going to do a grounding. So please go ahead, Gogo Rutendo, and share with us your interpretation for today's proverb.
Thank you so much, Simon. And it is a really beautiful proverb. He who runs alone cannot be outrun. And I think of a story of which some claim has become urban legend, and they want to think about the finer details of it. But I think the principle of the story is what's important. And in the story, it is said that there was a competition, like a special Olympics, with people who are differently abled, and they were running on a field. Obviously, as is the purpose of any competition, it is he or she who gets to the finish line first is the winner. As they were running, one of the athletes fell down. And one by one, all the other athletes turned round and noticed that their fellow competitor had fallen down. One by one, they turned back and they helped him to get up, and they linked arms and they walked together into the finish line. Obviously, that upsets the whole purpose of a competition where there's supposed to be an outright winner. But there is a principle which is inherent in African cosmology, in African spirituality, and in African social networks and social ways of being, in that we cannot do things alone. And if we are trying to outrun others, to get to the finish line first, the likelihood is that we will not have community around us to hold us up when we fall. So it is really, really important, from an African perspective, to ensure that we work to get together. I mean, in Shona, in Zimbabwe, for instance, if somebody dies, and people come together to commiserate. The actual word is kubata mawoko, which means to hold hands. You hold hands in order to ensure that you uplift each other. You create a community and a network, which is stronger and which is bigger than the sum of the individual parts. And only in building something that's bigger than the sum of the individual parts, I think, can we see Africa rising to the great heights that we know it has been and it is capable of being. And so let us not run alone, let us run together.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm so grateful, for your interpretation of today's proverb. And I hope you all have your notebook and pen, and you're taking some of the notes from this amazing, words of wisdom that Gogo Rutendo is sharing with us today. And I just want to continue on, and ask you to share with us, your perspectives when it comes to African spirituality, and also when it comes to how can we as African people of African descent globally, and also people who love nature and the world that we live in, people who love being here on earth, how can we embrace African spirituality more in these times, especially of the pandemic, and also during this moment when COP26 is happening, and world leaders and some of the most wealthiest people in the world are meeting to decide what climate change mitigation is going to look like.
Thank you so much. The word African spirituality is rather interesting because it places Africa as a monolithic being, and yet Africa is a large continent with a land area of more than 30 million square kilometers, and enough to fit the USA, China, India, Japan, Mexico, and many European nations in it combined. It has 54 countries. It has 5 geopolitical regions, including the 6th, which is the diaspora, which many people here on this call are on. It has more than 3,000 ethnic groups, more than 2,000 languages, a population of more than 1.3 billion, large biodiversity, 7 climate types. All of these contribute towards the expression of spirituality. So when we're looking at African spirituality, we cannot look at it as a monolithic entity. It has many nuances, especially based on the region that one comes from, or even within that particular region, there are certain, ethnic groupings that have a particular way that they express their spirituality. But having said that, there are common themes in African spirituality, and with respect to spiritual practices. For instance, the belief in an overarching supreme being, and often people believe that because of the reverence to ancestors, it means that Africans are pagans or heathens and do not recognize an overarching supreme being, and yet it's inherent to African spirituality. There are also archetypal principles, that make up the whole combination of what creation is, these archetypal principles. And these are often represented as different deities, And I think if you go into the Yoruba tradition, for instance, they're very set orishas, and these orisha represent a particular principle, archetypal principle that is inherent in creation as we know it, and that is universal across, creation. And then there is a focus on those who have walked before. There's a focus on those who are present now. And there's a focus on those who are yet to come. So in Africa, we recognize that there is no separation between the ancestors, the living, and the descendants who are yet to come. And therefore, in honoring where we come from, and I mean, modern genetics will tell us that I am who I am because of my bloodline, because of those, that came before me. And by the same token, in African spirituality, I can only be who I am because of the communities, that have existed before me. And then with African spirituality, we find the use of ceremony, the use of ritual, the use of dance, the use of drum, the use of song, and absolutely importantly is a relationship with the elements of nature. Nature is the fundamental worship site. It is the place which created us and which houses it, and which we are custodianed by. And therefore we give reverence to nature. So I think, just that would be an overarching, sense of what each, what is encompassed in African spirituality. But if I were to go, for instance, into some of the different groups within Africa. As I said, it is a large mass. USA, China, all of that can fit into Africa. We start to see, as I said, there is an overarching supreme being, that we understand. And when we start to understand what the meaning of that overarching supreme being is, we start to understand the cosmology that informs the African spirit, the spirituality as manifested or as practiced in that particular grouping. So I'll start, for instance, with where I was born, which is Zimbabwe. And according to the Shona people of Zimbabwe, that overarching supreme being is called Mwari. But when we break it down etymologically, it means Mu'ari, the one who is. That which is self-existent, that which is present in its own creation, that which is at once immanent and transcendent. This being is a composite of actuality. It is an unlimited originator of all breath, and all spirits. And we find that there's an interchange between the word breath and the word spirit, moya or moya. It is the originator of all wisdom, the originator of all power. And this being is at once masculine and feminine and ungendered. It is at once above and below. And in its feminine form, it is the darkness and the mystery of the great pool of water, Dziva Guru. In the masculine form above, it is the light of creation, the sun, the stars, lightning. It is the waters of life, fertility, the sun, and love. So it is not some distant being up there who we cannot reach. Mu'ari, the one who is, exists and subsists around us, but more than that, Mu'ari exists and subsists within us. And that's when we start to understand what African spirituality is. It is how we are connected to all of creation. But then maybe that's just, where I'm coming from. So let's look at, closer to where you're from, where, in Kenya, we look at Ngai, who is the creator of the universe and all that is, and which is an androgynous being who comes in both the benevolent form, or the black form, as well as a red, angry, malevolent form. So African spirituality doesn't have a heaven and hell, but it recognizes that within everything is its opposite. Within everything is its opposites, and that these are interdependent and creative forms. Right now, there's a great storm around me. I don't know if you can hear the lightning and thunder around me. And this is because we're seeing forces, in conflict with each other, which are bringing about, the thunder, which is allowing the rain to form. It's because of the heat that the moisture was able to rise up and get into this battle in the sky, and so that we're able to receive the life-giving waters. And this, this is what we hear about with Ngai. Ngai presides over the rain, presides over fertility, presides over the sun, over love, and it has a primordial unity with cattle. And in African spirituality and African customs, we find cattle playing a very significant role. Here in the South, they are used, for instance, as a dowry, as a bride price, But they're also an economic system. They're also an investment system, And you would find, for instance, and it goes back to our proverb in Lesotho, that if you have a family, one who's wealthy, meaning they have a lot of cows, and one who is poor, the community would not see this as a natural order of things. And so what they would do is that they would ask for one of the young boys from the poor family to become a herd boy to look after the cattle for the richer or the wealthier family. And at the end of the year, the young boy would be given a calf or a cow, sorry, who is pregnant, and perhaps even a male cow, because we recognize that in being pregnant, it has the potential for increasing its investment, and a male cow, and this becomes the payment, and then they're allowed to use that very same to allow that those cows to pasture in the very same field as those of the wealthy man. By the time this young boy reaches 20, he has enough cattle because he's built up his wealth base, in order for him to be able to be an independent man. And therefore, the concept of equality, here in South Africa, for instance, we have very high inequality. It has, one of the highest Gini coefficients in the world, is actually leveled out. And so, and it goes once again to the proverb that we cannot run alone. That rich man is not trying to be the only one that's rich in the society. He's seeing, how do I allow us all to rise, using our individual skills. We can continue going. Let's go to Congo or DRC or Angola, where the omniscient being is Nzambi Mpungu, who is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, yet invisible, but is the one who creates all that is. It is the creator of the universe, the one who intervenes in every creative venture of humans, the one who animates all life in all things, and is related to Nzambi, the deity of earth's mystery. So we always see this interrelatedness between that which is happening above, the invisible and the concealed, and that which is happening here, on earth. And so we're never separate from anything. And this is a fundamental, aspect of African spirituality. It's interconnectedness, interrelatedness, and interdependence, not separatedness, not the zero, sum game, not othering, but how everything interconnects and interweaves with each other. And so we start seeing common threads. For instance, amongst the Dahomey or the Fon in Benin, we have Maulisa, who's the supreme entity, who's a complementary sexual force that merges into one being, and we are all considered to be a complementary of the masculine and the feminine, and the feminine is Mau, the masculine is Lisa, and they are interdependent dualities responsible for all of creation, a two-in-one force. And so we realize that we cannot have a patriarchy that does not recognize a matriarchy. We cannot even have a matriarchy that does not recognize a patriarchy. Everything has to weave, if we're to have a sustained way of living. We need to always to see this interweaving between equal and opposite forces. So this is just a brief, just touching on different aspects of African spirituality. As I say, it is so diverse. I mean, we have the Dogon, for example, who are very well known for their knowledge of astronomy, and whose supreme being is Amma, who's the self-created God who initiated the formation of the universe from an impulse emanating from its egg, Amma's egg. And we start seeing this principle of an egg, even if we come down here in Southern Africa to the Batwa, the Barwa, or the First Nations people, that they recognize this force of creation. So the kind of creation we have within us as humans, there's an egg that gets seeded, in order to bring forth life, is just a manifestation of the cosmic, creation that happens outside of us. So in African spirituality, we're always seeing how we are connected with that which is without us. How does the diaspora, get in touch with it? As I've said, firstly, in Africa, we consider, there's 5 official regions, but we consider the diaspora to be the 6th region of Africa. So, as we've said, we're not separate. Those in the diaspora, your grandmothers, your great grandmothers have walked here, have planted here, have they've shed their blood here. So you are as connected to this land as we are connected to this land, just having been dislocated across whatever oceans or seas, or one in the diaspora has been dislocated to. So I think it would be, how do you connect with the nature that is inherent in the soil that you're originally, come from? We often talk about, for instance, if we want to talk about somebody who belongs to a particular place in Africa, we will often say they are a son of the soil. What do we mean when you say you're a son of the soil? You're a son of the nature, that which grows, that which produces life, which plants life in that particular space. So how do you send your seeds to plant them back into the soil where your ancestors have come from? And one exercise I would encourage is, if one is able to trace your family tree and see where it is on this great continent, you may have found your roots, because once we start understanding that, we start understanding our ancestral lines, we start understanding the different spirits that impact our ancestral lines, and we start understanding who we are, even if we are outside the continent, in the diaspora. And there are many who are in exile from Africa, even while they're living on the continent as well. So it's not only those who are in the diaspora who may feel alienated, but I think colonialism has done a really good job of alienating many of us from who we are.
Thank you so much. As you are speaking and nature was interacting with you and all of us in real time, I thought about an article that I read yesterday that was written by Jane Aidu, who is in the audience, who was on stage a moment ago with us, and I picked an excerpt from that article that says, we are in partnership with Mother Nature, and we should let go of our false notions of domination over all we share our earth with. And I wanted you to just paint a picture of where you and Jane Aidu and a number of other go-go's were recently, because I just love being in your presence, because you're not a leader that just talks, but you practice and you inspire people to not only get nourished by this knowledge and wisdom that you're sharing, but also to practice and embody African spirituality. So share with us, just paint a picture of where you are all at recently, that's what resulted in the excerpt I was just reading. And then from there, I also want you to just briefly share with us really how everybody who is listening to today's conversation can support your work.
Well, we've taken a number of trips to various sacred sites and sacred communities, but the one trip that we took that inspired that particular article was in a place in the north of South Africa that they call the land of myths and legends. And this is in Venda. And in Venda, we get three main groupings. We get the Vavenda themselves. We get the Tsonga people, or sometimes called the Shangaan people, who originate in Mozambique. And we also get the Pedi people, who are of Sutu extraction. And around nearby, we also get the Balubedu people. Many of the Vavenda and the Balubedu are offshoots coming from the further north, coming in from Zimbabwe. And when we get to Venda, we actually see a place called Zata, which is actually a much later civilization to that of Great Zimbabwe, which we find when we're in Zimbabwe. So we find a lot of interplay between, the cosmologies and the rituals and the ceremonies and the ways of those across the Limpopo, because there's the Limpopo River that divides us and down here in South Africa. What's very interesting, if I just speak about Zata, is that, and once again speaking about the place of myths and legends, is that you find stones at Zata which are not endemic to the area in which they're built, and they built with dry stone walling where they don't use cement or any mortar, but the structures are left standing. And those stones are the kinds of stones you find at Great Zimbabwe, which means that those who traveled there traveled more than 600 kilometers, using what technology? We may start to inquire about carrying heavy stones that they used to rebuild or to build from anew when they got to the place Zata. So this is that kind of place. There are many, many sacred forests, and there's what we call Lake Fundusi, which is a sacred lake, and it's the only natural lake in South Africa that was created by a landslide. And it is said that that is where God descended, into this lake. And often it is represented by a great white python, great white crocodiles. In the forest, they get white lions, and the people, the Vavenda people, will do anything to protect their sacred spaces, because they insist, as we know from African spirituality, that when we protect the sacred spaces, we protect our economic space, our economic structures, we protect our social structures, we protect our educational structures, we protect our climatic structures. And this goes back to the reason the COP, conference is happening at the moment, and it's all inherent in how those sacred spaces and sacred sites are used, and how ritual is used in order to ensure that the entire community, the entire country, the entire continent, the entire world is kept intact. And what's very interesting about the Vavenda people is that those who are really hold the custodianship of these sacred sites are what we call the Makadzi. And these are women elders. And these women elders hold the keys and the ceremonies and the knowledge to keep these sacred sites intact. And we were there with many Makadzi. One in particular, her name is Vo Makadzi Mpateleni Makaulule, who has often been called the defender of sacred sites. And she has worked very hard to defend sacred sites from mining and from tourism and things that seek to have economic value, but once down the line we'll see that even that economic value will not be for the benefit of the whole, and it is degrading nature and the land that we live in. And, we listened to how these Makadzi interact with the trees of the forest and how they're so passionate about reforestation in the in the face of deforestation, which, they were speaking. These are rural women. They've never been to Johannesburg, never sat in a conference center. They have never flown, to Glasgow for, a COP conference. But everything they were saying from an indigenous perspective is precisely what is needed in terms of, keeping our earth habitable for humans. Because as we know, we are slowly, not slowly, very fast, degrading our environment to such a place that humans are not going to be able to survive, much longer. And we're seeing it already with the current pandemic and, everything else that's happening with relation to global warming and climate change. So this is that place. It's full of mysteries. The most amazing events take place when one is in Venda, all of them held down by the female elders, the women, the Makadzi, and that is how they keep all of society intact. If I can just paint a picture, imagine a place of red sand, of deep indigenous forests, of green, of a place where you can literally see trees talking to each other. You can literally see the waves of energy between a tree, talking to the next tree. Some of the chiefs are up on the mountain, and you have to travel, amongst boulders, in order to get there, where you're being served indigenous food, food that comes from the forest. There's nothing artificial in that. And you see how strong these elders are because they're living as close to nature as they possibly can. And they're interacting with nature in every way possible.
Wow. Thank you so much. I'm grateful, for your abundance of wisdom, and really for sharing with us, especially the picture that you painted for us and the role of the of this amazing group of Gogos that you visited with. Now I want to also welcome everybody who is with us on Clubhouse. For a moment I just felt like we were in a different space with Gogo Rutendo Ngara, and I even forgot about Clubhouse and YouTube. But I see that we have quite a few people watching this live on YouTube. Thank you so much, Mala and Kat. And everybody else who have joined us on YouTube. If you want to join us there, the link is at the top of the Clubhouse room. And please remember to follow the Black Fox and African Spirituality Club. They've generously hosted today's Daily African Proverbs featuring Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who, we've learned her interpretation of the proverb that you see at the top of the room, which is, "He who runs alone cannot be outrun." Think about your interpretation if you're on stage, and also think about a brief comment to Gogo Rutendo Ngara. But I want to create space now for Kat and Mala, and also Chantril. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, to just pose a few questions and then your interpretations to Gogo Rutendo before we go to the amazing group of guests who have joined us on stage. Thank you so much, Dr. MD Williams, and also thank you so much, Denise and Easy and Census. We are going to bring you up on stage. Maybe for the next 2 minutes, we will allow a few more people to join us on stage. And then after that, we are going to turn off hand raising at 6:35. But for now, I'm passing the microphone to my wonderful sister, Kat, who, if you're on Clubhouse, you'll see that her name there is the Hungry Medium. Thank you again, Kat, for making this possible.
No, thank you, Simon, for being so receptive to this idea. I look at you, I finally see your face on YouTube, and I said, he looks exactly like my brother. So this just connects me to you even further. I didn't even know what you look like, and now I know why we've been brought together. Thank you, Gogo Rutando Ngara. I appreciate your words. I'm mesmerized by your words. I was there last week when you did the grounding, and I was just like laid out on my bed while I was just, immersed in that beautiful meditation. I'm looking forward to that. I want to give my time over the actual proverb. It's something that I struggled with when I saw it because I really didn't understand it until I'm going to call you Ia Gogo, okay? Until Ia Gogo um, explained her definition about the race being run and the fellow uh, athletes helping one another to reach the finish line. And in that way, I think it really connected for me. So I'm going to give my time over to Marla and Chantrell. And I know Chantrell has something to say in a great way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kat, and good morning, Gogo. It's so good to see your beautiful face on YouTube. I'm just so grateful to Simon and the AFI podcast for, all of the work that they continue to do and for the introduction. And my question before I yield to Chantrell, so I'm going to ask the question and then give my interpretation so you have a moment. But for those who were not able to be present, um, for the first time that we met with you, um, if you felt led to share a little bit of your journey. So we learned about a lot about the work that you are doing, and Kat has alluded to the beautiful meditation practice that we're hoping may come to close the room. But your story, you are just such a warrior woman, and I just wouldn't want this moment to pass without people being able to hear from you a little bit about your journey. And for me, I'll admit, as a part of the Black folk and African spiritual part, so me, being raised in the United States, when I saw it, I initially interpreted as he who runs alone cannot be outrun, in that you are not in competition with anyone else, you're in your own race. So you don't have to worry about looking to your right or your left, to just focus on the path and your journey and the assignment that you accepted when you came into this realm. But after hearing you, and that's the beautiful part about sitting under wisdom, I now can have greater capacity in understanding that if it truly is a race to be run in community and you are running alone, you are outside of the realm of your covering. And so, it's, you got to understand the order. And so I'm just going to continue to sit with the proverb. And I'm just so excited for everyone who's joined us on the stage to hear those interpretations. There's no right or wrong way. We hear and we experience things through the lenses of our perception, shaped by our experiences and the programming that we received. And so there's an opportunity for us to leave this space with greater capacity than we joined. So I yield the mic back to you, Sister Gogo, and then I will turn it over to my sister Chantrell. This is Marlon. I'm complete.
Thank you so much, my sister. And as you say, there's no right or wrong answer, actually. And what is fundamental to Africa is that it's both and. All the answers form part of the collective. All the answers, form part of the tapestry. And it's not either or, which is unfortunately the dominant paradigm which we live in today. Sure. In terms of my story, maybe I can go a bit earlier than last week. Last week I was asked to speak about an experience between 8 and 12. So perhaps I can go to a bit earlier to around 6. And part of what I think has informed my story is growing up. I was born actually in the middle of the liberation war in Zimbabwe. But concurrently, while that was taking place, there was also the height of apartheid in South Africa. And my parents actually, I was born in Zimbabwe, and they had to smuggle me across warring Zimbabwe, and they smuggled me across borders, through the ravages of apartheid South Africa to get me to my mother's home country, which is Lesotho, which is in the mountains, because my parents come from different countries. And so this was my first few years of my life were the context of war for liberation. And then when I was 5 years old, the country of my birth, which is Zimbabwe, gained independence. At the time, we'd been living all over the place, in exile and, all sorts of things. And we happened to then live in Ethiopia, where my father was a diplomat, a deputy ambassador representing Zimbabwe, also in the Organization of African Unity at the time, which has now become the African Union. And I I recall we lived in a big house with a big wall. and we would always have, all manners. It was a wonderful Pan-African community. Would always have, people from all around the continent, coming either to our house or us going to other houses. But I used to be bothered as a child because I went to an international school, and there was one Ethiopian, his name was Alex, in this whole school. And I couldn't understand how I'm in Ethiopia and there's only one Ethiopian boy at the school. And I also couldn't understand how we had this big wall around the house that we lived in, but every time we went out of that wall and drove through the streets in order to get to that international school where there was only one Ethiopian child in the whole school, there was poverty like I had never seen, and I could not reconcile this with being on the other side of the wall. So I think from an early age, apart from the whole Pan-Africanist outlook that I had from being in the midst of the OAU at the time, and all the other African nations that I got in touch with, there was also this idea of inequality and justice, and Ethiopia holds a very special place in my heart, because of my experiences, in quite formative years of my life where I was questioning the inequality and questioning, why wealth is not shared across the board. And so basically, I think it goes back to this proverb of that one cannot. If you run alone, you cannot outrun others. So that's, I think, a bit of my story that I have impromptu been asked to share. But it's definitely something that really defines my outlook, especially in light of today's where this proverb from today comes from.
Thank you so much. This is Simon speaking. I know I want to pass the microphone quickly to Chantriel, but I do want to, before I do that, just allow Jay to, share with us, your thoughts, Jay, so far. I know you've been in and out of the room. And for those who are meeting Jay for the first time, he's the former Minister of Communications for South Africa. During the time that Nelson Mandela was the president, he was working very closely with him. And it's through Jay that I was able to connect with Gogo Rutendo Ngara. Because he's an elder and because he might be gone any minute, I just want to give him space to share with us his thoughts on this proverb and also any comments on our conversation today. And also, Jay, I always love to hear you share with us how are we doing. I feel like you're one of the elders who have always watched my efforts on Clubhouse, and since Africa Day earlier this year. How do you think we're doing, and how could we make this even stronger?
Thanks, Simon. And no, I was drinking from this fountain of wisdom that is Gogo Rutendo, and so I would allow myself the chance to do that. The two of us have been traveling for the past month. I think we've done 10,000 kilometers traveling to remote communities of indigenous people. And so we've had lots of time to talk and for me to distill from her wisdom what my role is as an elder. And yes, certainly, I've come to this point of, understanding what she talks about in terms of, it's not a choice between matriarchy and patriarchy. When we're talking about spirituality in Africa, it transcends all gender. It's not a gender, it's a dimension, same thing. It comes to, questions of culture or religion or language. These are things that we have created that have divided us, but they weren't it was not initiated by whoever created what exists today. So I think that, Simon, my role as an elder is really to give aerial cover to people of your generation and even younger, that we don't have all the answers. My generation, and I classify myself in the same generation as the Mandela generation or a lot of the liberation struggle, leaders and icons. And I consistently ask myself the message, why is it that we end up with revolutionary movements that eat their children? We've just had a local government election on the 1st of November. Half the people in this country did not vote in this election. So the biggest political vote was a no vote. And the biggest political party was no political party. Now, that's in my lifetime where I know people that died for the right to this vote. So something we have to ask ourselves, what is freedom? And how do we understand freedom? And what I have come to as a conclusion is that changing a system and fighting injustices that exist, racism that exists, apartheid that exists, is painstaking, it's frustrating, it could be very dangerous, but it can be done. I think the biggest challenge facing us today is how do we change people? Because if we don't change people, if we don't change and understand who I am, what does it mean to be African? What does it mean to be human? How do I live? And it comes back to the proverb of the day. We community, but the community is not just defined as human beings. The community is everything, as Gogo Rutendo says. It's the ancestors are not just on your human lineage. It is the mountain, it is the tree, it is the baobab, it is the stream, it is the ocean, it is the desert. All of these give us information, give us knowledge, and give us wisdom. But we have this idea that we have dominion. And so we've brought the world to an edge of an ecological emergency that threatens the future survival of our children and our grandchildren. And now we have this massive conference in Glasgow, and I read an article 400 airplanes, private airplanes, have landed in a conference by our leaders, the billionaires, the celebrities, the heads of state, to talk about how to reduce global warming. But everything and how they arrived at this conference disputes their commitment to it. So we cannot depend on looking up any longer for leadership. We have to look down, and we look down, we'll find millions of people doing the right thing, building the new way in which we should live. And this platform, Simon, and you going back to African wisdom, is reversing the demonization, the ridiculing, the destruction of indigenous cultures in the world in favor of a dominant Western culture that thinks it's a divine gift to us. And yet, if we go back to where we come from, the cradle of humanity, maybe we have the solutions. And I am confident in the last few weeks that there are solutions in the indigenous communities about how we should learn to live as part of nature rather than apart from nature. And that's why I'm grateful for the work that you do.
Wow, thank you, Jay. I'm so grateful, for everything you shared with us, and I'm excited to have a conversation with you so that we can really go a little deeper, because there's an article you recently wrote for I think it's the Daily Maverick. So I'll follow up with you, but I'm really grateful for your presence. It means a lot, and thank you for connecting Gogo Rutendo, Ngara, and myself, and see what we've been able to do just in 2 weeks. So I'm really, really grateful. Let's hear from Chantril here real quick. Thank you so much.
Oh my God. First of all, good morning, Brother Simon. A good day. Also to Gogo Rutendo, Ngara, and Baba. I'm gonna call you Baba, which is a sign of respect in our community. Baba J. I feel like I'm on fire, and that doesn't take much because my Orisha is Shango, the god of thunder and lightning. So listening to you all, my mind is racing. I have so much to say, but I'm gonna keep it really brief. This conversation is so funny how things are aligned. Hilariously, my photo on YouTube was taken in South Africa, in Johannesburg, right before the pandemic occurred, and I got back right in time, even though I could have stayed, but my husband probably wouldn't have been too happy about that. I literally just told one of our elders yesterday that my trip to South Africa was one of the most fascinating, magical, powerful, transformational experiences. And me going as a Yoruba priest, going there and going to the cradle of humankind, and I was weeping in the fields. I'm like, our earliest ancestors walked in these fields, even going into the cave. And it wasn't funny, but my friend was telling me, he was like, did you ever see a dragon before? And I was like, what? I like a crocodile? Because I'm from New Orleans. So we got crocodiles, we have alligators, all of that, and swamp creatures. I grew up, I'm from the swamps. And he was like, no, a dragon. And he tells me how he goes to Zimbabwe with his grandmother to visit an elder. They were doing some type of, work for their family, and they went into this lake that they were not supposed to go into. And, his grandmother was like, I told y'all boys not to go into the lake. I told you not to go in the lake. While they're in the lake, he says a dragon encircles them. And so, of course, they freak out because they're like, it's a dragon. So they leave, they go to the shore, they go back to the house, the elder, and he starts laughing because they're like, oh my God, I saw a dragon, I saw a dragon. And everybody's like looking at them like they were crazy. And he starts laughing. He's like, that was me in my animal farm. But nobody is supposed to see me. And my children knew that you all should not have been allowed to go up into that lake. And so he scolds his children. And my mouth was agape when I heard that story, but it wasn't shocking to me. I'm like, of course, in Zimbabwe, they have dragons, and, that's this elder spirit, farm. Of course, even when we went to the caves at, I don't know the Afrikaner's name of it, but the caves at the origin of humankind, and we were in there, and you could feel the caves alive. And he was like, there are initiations that, sometimes take place in these caves, and they're initiated by the deities that live in the caves. And I'm like, listen, I've done some initiations in my life, but I'm not ready for that kind of initiation. But I was just overwhelmed by the majesty and the power of spirituality that permeated through, the land itself. And, what I like to tell people is that our traditions are nature-based systems, so Baba J, thank you for, again, saying that. I'm too overwhelmed right now because and then I have a book club called the ATR's Book Club, the African Traditional Religions Book Club. We're reading a book right now called African Religions, A Very Short Introduction by Dr. Jacob Olupona, who is a Nigerian scholar at Harvard, who's been, studying and researching African traditions of spirituality across the continent and the diaspora. And this conversation, like everything you said, Gogo, Rutundo, Ngara, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name, is like literally, I'm like, this is the audio companion to the book. We're discussing this book on Sunday, so I think it's all divine. But I just want to say thank you. I had a question, but I feel like Baba J answered it. And the question was, given, the prominence of Eurocentrism, white supremacy, Christianity, and even Islam on the continent and the diaspora, do you believe it is our responsibility as a people of African descent to practice African spirituality in our traditions? I'm done.
This is Simon speaking. Dear Gogo, could you respond to this briefly, and then when we pass the microphone to Dawn and Dr. M.D. Williams and everyone else on stage, Denise, Easy, Sensors, and Lord, just prepare your tweet-size comments and all response to the proverb, so that we can wrap up our conversation on time. We say there's an African proverb that says, do not dry where you took your shower. So we want to make sure that we dry elsewhere. But Gogo, please go ahead and respond to this. I want to create sufficient space for Gogo to do the grounding for us. That's part of why I'm trying to move us through this sharing moment, because the grounding is really, really special and we need to create sufficient time for it. So Gogo, please go ahead and respond to Shantria.
Okay, Tishantia, thank you, my sister. I'll give a very brief answer and say that in African spirituality, we recognize the power of cycles. And we've had a 500-year cycle in which our ancestors have been illegitimized, killed, tortured, together with our traditions, our spiritualities, our ways of doing. And that cycle is coming to an end and the ancestors are coming back. So that would be my answer.
Wow. Gogo, I have to say that I had this, what you said exactly. I had a conversation with, an elder from a very indigenous spiritual movement in my tribe, and he told me exactly what you said, I would love to bring him. I don't know. There's just something going on that I appreciate you saying what you said. Hey, Dawn, thank you for joining us. I know that, we are meeting for the first time, but I want you to know that your voice matters, and I'm grateful that you're here. Share with us, briefly your thoughts on today's conversation with Gogo Rutendo Ngara, and also if you have your interpretation for the proverb for today. Thank you very much.
Greetings to everybody. Can you hear me okay? I'm currently traveling.
Yes, we hear you very well. Thank you.
Awesome. I just want to pay homage to everybody's ancestors, the maternal and paternal lineages who have walked with them and caught them and gave them a safe space for us to be here today. I don't want to say too much, but I just have one request for the folks in the room and for those that may not be aware of the great history of Zimbabwe with respect to the Great Wall and paying homage to those ancestors that brought these beautiful people from this great country land and those ethnic groups and tribes up here, to just kind of pay homage to them. And just to give a small brief history for those that may be unaware of Great Zimbabwe. And that's all that I have at this time. In the Holy Odu of Osa Ogunda, for everybody that came to the world from heaven, uh, it is synonymous with the proverb that human beings came from heaven to earth in groups, and that is my understanding of the proverb, and that's all that I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Don, for your share. It means a lot. I'm grateful. Dr. M.D. Williams, please share with us briefly your comments or response to today's proverb. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. I'll be very brief. First, I'd like to thank everybody that was speaking. The information given today was mind-blowing, and I enjoyed it so much as a black man growing up in Houston, Texas, and with my my family background coming out of Louisiana. Learning more and more and more is very important about our African descent and our African history. But I want to talk on the proverb real quick, because I literally just taught this the other day. Somebody asked me the question, and I always say, you cannot run the race of another person, because if you run the race of another person, you lose the passion within your own race. But you can run your own race while celebrating others in their race, and that's what and this proverb just mirrors that exactly. And that's all I have to say.
Wow, thank you so much. Let's hear from Denise. Thank you for being here, Denise.
Thank you all for sharing. I just want to introduce myself very quickly. I live in Germany. I'm from a Creole family from Senegal. My father died over 20 years ago, and there are tears running down my cheeks right now, because I recognize all the time and also today that I feel so disconnected, like, I don't know, like a naked baby with my roots anywhere, but not in the soil. And today it's a new moon, and I was meditating and pulling a card from a card the deck I have, and the card was the elders. And now I'm here in this room, and you are sharing all your wisdom with me, and it makes me feel like even if I'm here, not knowing so much about my roots, I'm still connected, and I know that I'm not running alone. And yeah, I just want to say thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Denise. I just wanted to create a few seconds for us to just take in everything you shared with us. And yes, you're not alone. You're not alone. Easy, share with us your thoughts briefly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you, everyone, for being here. Again, thank you for all you amazing people here, Black folks and African spirituality, for hosting this conversation today. I think I'd like to again assure Denise that yes, you are not alone. That's number one. Number two, I think I have been so touched by what everyone has shared here. And especially, I have taken some deep points from what I'd call him Mzee J. Mzee in Swahili means, it basically means elder. Um, and it's basically just a respectful way to address your elders where I come from, which is the coastal part of Kenya. Yeah, and so I'd like to, just pinpoint on one of the things that ZJ talked about, which is that them as elders, they do not have all the answers, and that it's everyone's responsibility to make the continent of Africa be what we would like it to be, and ensure that the impact that comes out of the world that is positive, is what we would want to be. But it's everyone's responsibility. It's each one of us has a role to play, and so it's just not a matter of looking at the elders. There's, yes, a level of wisdom that our elders have. However, the rest of us have a responsibility. Every one of us has a responsibility over ourselves and over each other, and over and basically just to ensure that the world is what we would want it to be. In regards to the Proverbs today, the thing that I get from it is that you should be your own, or rather your biggest competitor. Competition is good, but then when you're your biggest competitor, then you stand the advantage of the fact that you're not under pressure to be outrun by anyone, because you're simply and basically running your own race. That is my time, and thank you so much, Simon, again for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Easy. I'm grateful, for your presence as well. Hey, Sensors, share with us your thoughts on today's conversation with Gogo Rutendo, or on the proverb. Thank you very much.
Hi, Simon. I am loving all of this. First, Rutendo. Rutendo, we actually have the name Rutendo in the Bavenda culture. It's used a lot there. And so I will greet you and say, Di Macheloni, Di Masiari. I grew up in Venda. And when you were talking about the waterfall, the lake, and the sacred culture and everything, you just reminded me of the forest. And I went to it, I visited it, because some of the chiefs were my father's friends, including the leading chief, the Ramabulanos, the heads of the Bavenda people. So it was just great to go back um, to that part where I really loved it. I grew around it and went all the way up to Beard Bridge, which is the border with Zimbabwe. Um, but that I understood everything you were saying, and that we have power, on our own. For those who don't know, within the history of South Africa, the Venda region, Limpopo region, this was some of the regions that were under their own kingdoms and therefore not fully part of the full South Africa under all of the apartheid system. So in a way, they were saved from certain things that happen in some of the regions. Um, Thank you for bringing back the stories and the rich soil. And I think Simon, last time in one of the gems of Africa, I talked about the beautiful countryside, the rich soil, one of the big baobab trees that's there, but also the culture and the tradition that comes with it, and the snake dance. There is a snake dance that people learn and do, and it's interesting how within the bead work that the Babenda people have, we find this across various African cultures, that we have this similar bead work that is put around the hip. Um, it talks of the connection that exists within us. Chivenda is also a Bantu language, so there is some words that you'd find similar across the Chivenda, the Chewa, all these different regions up to Congo, Swahili, meaning that we are connected. Our history is so connected, and there is the spirituality element of it. I just want to thank you on that. I come from my paternal side. We were rainmakers, and there were times when the rains didn't come as predicted, and people ended up getting killed, or burned or something like that. So our family left that part of the tradition, the spirituality. Um, but there is richness in us. There is so much richness in each and every part of us. And you were just talking about all of that. And this is just one part that's just in the Bavenda people. There is so much of it across the Africa region that I am happy, and I hope you have a site where people can follow you through. And Tata Naidu, thank you for bringing her forward to us. My interpretation of today's proverb is really that you will ever win the race when you understand what you are and what you stand for, your true identity. Without that, you'll constantly be trying to run other people's races. But once you know your essence, your purpose for existence, and that you are powerful no matter your current weakness, you know, it empowers you to be focused and driven on this new race that you're entering to. So in Kivenda, I tell you, Dolibua, Rotendo, and thank you, Simon. I'm complete.
Wow, thank you so much, Census. Census is South Sudanese. And then, Lord is from Ghana. Lord who is coming next. We literally have the whole continent, including the diaspora on this stage. I can't even imagine, everyone who is, I have to give a quick shout out to Faline. We have Belize represented, so the Caribbean is represented. And so really, 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 I'm grateful that we were able to bring the whole African village to this conversation this morning. Lord, share with us briefly your comments on the proverb or our conversation with Gogo Rutendo Ngara. Thank you so much.
Hey, Simon, greetings everybody. Wow, Simon, this is a special morning. I just chanced in. My time zone is different, but I'm really happy for this room. So thank you for actually setting this up. And to our auntie Gogo Rutendo, thank you very much. This is the first time hearing you speak, and it's very refreshing to hear, you know, Africans speaking about ourselves in the light that we actually deserve, because for throughout history, our true identity has been defined by other people, and it's really affected us for even to date. We're still fighting it. So to hear people like you, carrying the spirit of ancestors, for me personally, I think Simon knows this. It's a personal mission for me. If you look at my PTR now, today I'm feeling the spirit of Kwame Nkrumah. There's a mission that we are on here because our elder, since we're learning African languages, our Akan language, we say Wofa J. Wofa means our uncle or elder. I appreciate him also for his comment and the honesty that their generation, they don't have the answers because we live in a time of information. And I think it's very important for us to connect with our elders, those of us that are aligned in consciousness. Because the biggest problem in Africa, personally, I believe, is religion, because our consciousness is off. So the people are really scattered and we don't know where we're going. So those of us who are aligned in consciousness and understand what exactly we're up against, I think it's very, very important that we connect and to be able to start changing the mindset, because that's exactly why our ancestors were killed, defending our rights and our culture and our spirituality. So I'm happy and grateful, and I would definitely like to connect more to set up. Simon knows we have club rooms like United States of Africa to further the mission any way that we can. So anybody that plays a role, I think we all have a role to play, and united. That's the only way we can fight and overturn this. In our generation, we might not see the change. Being a student of history, I know this. Going back over 100 years, we have people who fought and bled for us to, have this opportunity. So this fight, even if we don't live to see it, we have to definitely do our part in this generation because people laid out their lives for us to be here today. So it's very personal to me. So I want to thank you once again for the job that you're doing, and any way that we can connect and support this and push this, because there is a wave about the cycles that you mentioned. Any spiritual person definitely understands that, and we have to guide the next generation onto the right path. I think that's what I wanted to share. So I'm really grateful that we're here. Simon, the proverb that you have, I think it's a simple reminder of being brave to run your race. Like in your life, if you do your best in your life, then you would never have regrets, or you never feel like you're losing. As long as you have the courage to run your race and know that you've done your best, nobody can outrun you in your life. So that's how I sum it up. So thank you, brother, and we will connect about the African Day theme. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Lord. And if you're meeting Lord for the first time, he's an amazing artist from Ghana. Make sure you follow him and make sure you support his music. And yes, I would love for us to talk about collaborative opportunities. That's why we are here. That's why we are in the Black Fox and African Spirituality Club. And if you're on stage, I just want you to quickly give mic taps to this amazing community that has embraced us and welcomed us, especially Kat and Mala at the top of the stage. And really, if you're on YouTube, thank you again for joining us. And make sure you leave your comment with what today's proverb means to you. The proverb is, "He who runs alone cannot be outrun." And if you're on Clubhouse, just know that we truly, truly appreciate you. Please make sure you follow the club that is hosting today's conversation. And now we want to pass it to Gogo Rutendo Ngara to share with us some closing remarks briefly, and then share with us the grounding to close us out. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you very much, Simon, and thank you so much to all the brothers and sisters from around the continent and the diaspora who have spoken. I think your words have really summed up the topic of the day and also the proverb. And I'm just reminded, that I know last week I told a rather martial story of my life. And as I said, I am a martial artist. And even when we're either on the floor or on the lei tai or in the ring, fighting another person, actually the person who you are in combat with is yourself. So ultimately, we're always in combat with ourselves, and everything we do should be around our own self-empowerment. It is about the inner battle, and the inner battle is what manifests in the outer space. And so maybe as we go into the closing and the grounding, Africa has many divination systems, many ways of looking at the patterns that make up life, many ways of looking at the patterns that make up the universe, because the whole universe, as we know, is made up of fractals. It is cyclical, it is patterned. And but one of the divination systems here in the south is what they call the bones. And when you go to a diviner, they will throw the bones in order to see what pattern the various elements in that purse are making, that may be reflective upon the cycles in your life at that time. And in order to animate those bones, often the diviner will ask you to blow into it, and before they throw into it. And if there's more than one person, each person will have the opportunity of blowing into this with their spirit. The moya is able to animate them into the question at hand. So I'd like us to imagine that, I'm not sure if we can see this, that we are blowing, all of us, into this collective bowl here, and that we are collectively going to throw the bones after we've put our breath into it. And so every time within the grounding that I say exhale, imagine you're blowing into this collective pot. So if we can just make ourselves comfortable, place your feet on the ground if they're not on the ground, and make yourself comfortable, and just take in a very deep breath and breathing out. And taking a deep, deep breath through the nostrils, and then allowing a huge exhale through the mouth. And then we're breathing in and we're breathing out. And we breathe in as we call in the all-pervasive spirit of Zep Tepi, that of first time, the origin, the cradle of humanity, the cradle of life. We call in generations of ancient ones, the forebears, who sit in circle, who breathe within us, who surround us, who ignite us, who empower us. We exhale, we breathe into the collective pot. We breathe in all ancestors from the seven directions, from the east, from the west, from the north, from the south, from above, and those from below, and those from the center. We call in the elementals, those of nature, the earth, the wind, the water, the fire, and the ether. We dance, we open the cracks, and we exhale into the collective pot. We call in those great ones of Sankofa, those of the ancient past, those who are birthing an ancient future, and those who live now at the confluence of time and timelessness. And we collectively exhale into the collective pot. We call in the great mothers, the nurturers, the creators. We call in the great fathers, the holders, the protectors. We call in the great warriors who exist in feminine and masculine form. We dance. We exhale into the collective pot. We call in the flowing spirits of the moon and the water, the still spirits of the earth, the mountains, the fiery spirits of the suns, the cleansing spirits of the air and the wind, the spirits of nature. We sing, we ululate, we exhale, we breathe into the collective pot. We call in the eagle, the falcon, the hawk who sees it all. We call in the lionheart who reveres it all. We call in the elephantine matriarch who remembers it all. We rupture, we exhale, we breathe into the collective pot. We call in the wisdoms of the rivers of Africa, the wisdom of the Nile River, the nourisher of great civilizations, the bringer of Ma'at, she who tracks Septip, she who tracks first time. We call in the obscurity of the Niger River, who takes not the most efficient route to the ocean, but the long, winding, accommodating route, the effective route. We dance, we swirl in the air, and we exhale. We breathe into the collective pot. We call in the power of the Congo River, who brings deepest healing from the deepest wounds of Africa. We call in the meanderings of the Zambezi, the mighty curtain of water in Musiwatunya, the smoke that thunders, the waters of life from the great dryings of Maharikhani. We emerge through the dark, we exhale, we breathe. We breathe in the Sinku River, the Charib, the Orange River, who carries the wisdoms of the ancient Barwa, the Twa, the Batwa, our First Nations peoples, our common ancestors who unite us all. We twirl through the waters, we exhale, we breathe through the collective pot. We breathe in the ancient wisdoms from within, the activisms from the out, the visionaries that are yet to come. We breathe in the whispers of Untu, those who plant seeds, collective seeds of consciousness, those who raise Bantu, Hantu, Kintu, Kuntu into an interwoven web of connectedness. We breathe in the collective creative powers of sacred places and spaces throughout the world. We ground, we earth, we exhale. We breathe in to the collective pot. And we breathe in the great baobab of Venda, the tree of life. As we call in the breath, we call in the cycles of creating. We call in this year, this month, this day, this hour, this minute, this moment in time and timelessness. We honor the great ancestors who unite us all. We call in those of the waters, Yemaya, Oset, Numkubulwane, Demeter, Yosid, Dumavati, Gabriel, Moonshine. We call in Oshun, we call in Heteru, we call in Nomdende, we call in Green Tara, we call in Marimba, Sarasvati, Gangamai, Kalamatika, the Venus shine. We call in the fires, the masculine in Ogun, in Herkuti, in Odin, in Gebura, in Ngozi, in the Mars which shines. We call in Shango, we call in Heru, Apollo, Munumutapa. We call in Mikael, we call in Zipporeth, we call in the sun as it shines. We breathe together, we dream together, we see together, we recreate together, we renew together, we regenerate together, we heal together, we rekindle together. We breathe in to the collective pot as we recognize that we are agents of the future calling. We come in together. We call in unity. We call in Oser. We are one. Tokozani. Kamago. Ashe.
Ashe, thank you. Thank you very much.
Ashe, thank you so much.
Wow, Gogo Rutendo Ngara, thank you again for making the time. Whenever I am with you and in the presence of our village, time becomes meaningless. I just feel like I traveled ages and ages and ages since we started our conversation almost an hour and a half ago, and we've come to the painful end where we have to part ways, and that's very, very hard to do. But really, thank you. And to Kat and Mala and Elder J and Chantril and Dawn, thank you for being the team that made this possible. And I hope we can team up and continue making this a regular occurrence. We should normalize having this depth of conversations and also bringing it to our day-to-day lives and our existence and to our children's lives, and make this what transforms our communities. So thank you all. Remember to follow my YouTube channel, Simon Javan Okelo, and also if you want to catch this conversation later on, you can check it out on the African Father in America podcast, which is on all podcasting platforms. You should be able to catch this episode in the next 2 hours. And also, if you go to YouTube now, you'll see the live stream. And even in the next few minutes, you'll be able to watch the replay of today's conversation. We do this daily African Proverbs every day since January. And there are so many people in this room who could not be on stage with us that helped build this. I see Tess in the room. Thank you for being here. I see Jay. Thank you for being here. And I also see David. And of course, all of you in the room who are not on stage are a big part of why we are here today. So thank you. With that, we are going to end our conversation today. I am truly, truly grateful. And we'll see you tomorrow morning in the African Father in America Club, where we typically host this conversation. And I'm confident that we'll be coming back here in the Black Fox and African Spirituality Club for more conversations. So expect to see us back here very soon. Thank you so much. Gogo Rutendo, thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
African Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello.